Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Another week, another podcast. I hope you guys had a great week this week, and you're looking forward to that Friday drive, getting ready to punch out for the weekend and go home and work on your Volkswagen. And hopefully you're getting ready for one crazy weekend that's coming up October 6th and 7th at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. It's going to be a rager. We've got a Friday night strip cruise. We have Saturday morning car show, and we have the world famous Saturday evening Let's Talk Dubs in the Wagon One Crazy Weekend poker run. So that's where you get a chance to win your share of $2,000 in cash that we give out. So make sure that you guys check that out. We're sponsored by Findlay Volkswagen on that, as well as Nevada Off-Road Buggy, SoCal Speed Shop, Sunkist Graphics, Ross Wolf, VW Trends Magazine. Those are all some of the people helping us with this particular event. So we appreciate all of those. And we may be having some other sponsors come on board as well. So make sure, last I checked, I talked to my guy at the hotel, and we've got a lot of rooms booked out already. They filled up our thing. They released 10 more rooms. So I need you guys to book those rooms. Make sure you got your rooms booked. So we've got, there's just a ton of people going to be coming to town for that. And make sure that you guys may have to double up in some rooms or find a place to stay. Either way, it's going to be one crazy weekend here in Las Vegas. So don't forget, get registered. Go online at letstalkdubs.com. This podcast is brought to you by the likes of VW Trends Magazine, a magazine for the people, by the people. It is one of the most unique VW magazines on the market today. Lots of how-tos, tons of color pages, and water-cooled VWs in it as well. So make sure you guys go subscribe today at VWTrendsMagazine.com. That's VWTrendsMagazine.com. Also, Ross Wolf, high-quality aftermarket parts made by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. So you might want to make sure you check out their website at rosswolf.com. You can pick yourself up one of those Viton gaskets, the reusable gaskets for your oil sump. No more paper gaskets and silicone and all that funky business. Just a nice new sump cover plate and Viton gaskets. You might also check out their locking dipsticks or even their velocity stacks. How about their distributor clamps? I don't know. Get yourself a set of bus deck lid hinges. If you got a raggedy old deck lid hinges on your bus, get yourself some deck lid hinges. I need some deck lid hinges for the Bull Run bus. I got to call Ross Wolf, get a set of deck lid hinges. So the deck lid hinges looking pretty raggedy on the Beetle Barn bus, I meant to say. So we'll be getting a set for those, for that bus coming up. Don't forget to support those guys. Go to rosswolf.com. If you happen to be at a car show and you see the guys from Ross Wolf, tell them you heard about them on Let's Talk Dubs, and they'll have a special surprise for you. So this week's podcast, it's an awesome one. Back in the 90s, there was a lot of cool cars. One of the coolest cars that I remember was Pookie's Dream, and that car was super rad. Late model squareback on fully polished Fuchs, detailed to the nines, cool custom compartment in the back with a speaker, some wine glasses, the usual. It looked good, the old shifter, the velour interior, the Nissan Pulsar seats in it. This thing was way back from the get back, super rad. I loved it. It was one of my favorite all-time squarebacks, even in spite of it being a late model. And on this week's podcast, we get to talk to Tony Moyer, who's the guy who built this car. Super cool squareback, was on the scene for several years, and it was always there, and it just kept getting more and more refined and defined until ultimately he sold the car. So we get to track down the story, talk to him firsthand, see what it was like, who he was showing against, all those cool things, and what was happening in the 90s right about that time that he got rid of the car. And then, again, we track down what happened to the car, and it's a cool surprise ending to the podcast. So get your issue of August 1991 VW Trends Magazine out so you can follow along, check out the car. This week's podcast, Pookie's Dream, Tony Moyer on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like. So if you happen to see a good-looking Volkswagen, don't panic.
Okay, everybody. So on today's podcast, a lot of times we go and start chasing down cars from the past that were some of the feature cars and maybe cars that influenced us. And I personally originally got into Volkswagens being inspired by squarebacks. That was one of the first issues that I saw back in '87. And then later I was always looking in the magazines for other squarebacks. And so on today's podcast, You guys may remember a squareback by the name of Pookie's Dream, and it was in the August of 1991 VW Trends. And on today's podcast, I have the owner and builder of Pookie's Dream, Tony Moyer, on the podcast. Tony, welcome to the show.
Howdy, how you doing?
The way we start the podcast always is the squareback in and of itself was really, really cool. It was a late model squareback. I got a lot of questions about some of the things that you did and why you picked this and all that kind of fun stuff. But the way we always start the podcast is, what's your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens?
I actually started out, I originally started out with a 1971 Plymouth Roadrunner. It was a short-lived journey. But when one day I was driving close to home somewhere, and I drove by this late model squareback that was sitting parked on this street.
Yeah.
And it caught my eye for some reason or another. There was nothing specifically special about it or anything, but it just caught my eye. And I thought, well, that was really cool. I mean, I'd like this, I came back around, rolled by it again, and thought, okay, well, that would be an interesting car to have if, I really wanted to go that route. I knew a couple of people from high school that were into bugs. Bugs are okay, but when I saw this squareback, I knew I had to get my hands on one. From that point forward, fast forward, I was in the Roadrunner breaks down, I get rid of it. I'm in the search for a Volkswagen, and I'm in the search for a squareback.
Right.
And I'm around, and of course, my dad, he kind of talked me away from the squareback, and we found a 65 Bug sitting on a car dealership that really stood out. It was slammed, stock motor, Porsche red, and we're talking 1984. It had just the chrome stock rims, chrome moon caps on it. I bought it, not wanting to be my first car, but I bought it. And that's how it started for me, the whole journey going.
And then when you bought this car, so originally you bought it as kind of a daily driver. And what was, with this car, what was the original color on this car?
Are you talking about the squareback?
Yeah, when you first bought it, because in the story it talks about how when you first bought it, you kind of daily drove it for a while.
Yeah, the dream came along after I got rid of the Bug. I had the Bug from 84 to 88. I sold it. The reason why I sold it was because I was a coworker of mine at the time. He approached me about this squareback. And he said, yeah, he goes, what would be his future in-laws had this squareback, and they had it stored away in their garage, and the guy was thinking about selling it. And he knew that I wanted one. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll go check it out. So he arranged for me to check it out. I go in there. I go to this gentleman's house. He opens up his garage, and there sits this gold 72 squareback.
Oh, so it was gold. Yikes.
It was gold, yeah. Gold. It was a Latino family. They bought the car brand new. It had everything on it that it came off the lot with. It was originally a light beige car, but they painted it gold, and they drove it. Basically, they used it to drive the family to and from down south in Mexico. And the car saw a lot of. It was a road warrior.
Right.
Definitely a road warrior. But the guy was initially reluctant to sell because it was kind of a family member. He had the emotional attachment, and so did some of the family members.
Sure.
But we talked to him. I convinced him. I said, "Look, I'm going to take this car, and I'm going to redo it, and I'll bring it back when I'm done, and so you can see the end result. And he's all like, okay, very good. $500 later, I come, tow the car out of the garage, get it at home, pull it in the backyard, and start planning.
And at this time, what is some of your? Are you involved in the VW scene at all, or are you just going into this blind and you just kind of have a cursory understanding?
Actually, I mean, my first VW show was actually back in, God, I don't know if you remember or not, the Malibu Grand Prix that they had down here.
Yeah.
There's one in Anaheim, there was one in Anaheim, one in Puente Hills. There was a series of VW car shows that happened, and they were held at these venues. My first show was actually going down to the Anaheim show. Chris Addington's car was there when it was blue.
Right, Crystal Blue Persuasion. Yeah, that's what it was called.
Yeah, it was blue at that time, and I drove down there in the Bug, and a buddy of mine went with me. Enjoyed the show, thought it was cool. Next one comes around, and it's at Puente Hills, and I attended that one, and I actually entered my Bug at the time. I did put it in the show with the intent on selling it at the show, because I really wanted to move on from it at that point. At that show, for what I understand, you are the owner of the famous Connect notchback.
Yeah, Future Shock sits in my garage right now.
That car, I believe, debuted at that show at Puente Hills. It was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
so this has got to be 84, 85, maybe 85.
Yeah. This goes pre Jamboree, and I never attended the Johnny Speed and Chrome shows. Mm-hmm. I may have actually attended one, but I never actually had a car in one. But but again, I was in the process of actually, trying to keep the car running. Then I turned around, stripped it, and put it back together. But that's where it's. I mean, I go that early. And then when I bought the Dream, and I spent the first 13 months flipping it into a driver. Right.
Because it was probably, being a 72, it would have been fuel injected and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
And so you had to go through and do all that.
Or the stock motor. I had a mild 1776 built for it, German Auto in Santa Fe Springs, which were at the time, they were specialists in off-road, off VW building. They built the motor for me, redid the trans, and had the car together. Basically, I really didn't look for. I've never was a person to look for the mainstream or the big dollar shops to do the work on the cars. I did a lot of assembling for myself, and I always wanted to get the smaller guys involved, like with paints. It was a small guy in Whittier that did the initial base on it. The first paint job on that car, version 1.0, as I'll refer to it. Right. And that's when I was from 88 to 90. And then I had an interior guy. And that interior guy, he actually come to find out that he did the interior work on my Roadrunner when he was in Montebello. And I didn't know about it until like 2 or 3 years after dealing with them with the Dream.
Yeah.
We kind of put two and two together and say, hey, wait a minute. you guys used to be here. Yeah, there we were. So, but yeah, but it was we flipped it into a driver, got it going, and had a lot of fun with it. Drove it everywhere.
And
it was my driver.
What fires you off to like decide to make it a show car? Because that's a pretty big step to take.
Step. Yes, that was a big step. That happened in '90. I relocated from the Whittier area to Ontario. I had done a show. At the time I had started doing the RG Canning shows.
Mm-hmm.
I did a show in Long Beach, and it was the first one I did. And there was a club of VWs that were at the show named Fast Four, and they were based out of the Inland Empire. They were big at the time. I mean, a fairly big group, not as big as they were earlier in the '80s, but they were still a fairly large, healthy club. And what that led to was me tracking them down after I moved out here in Ontario with my wife, and we found them.
Now that's not the club. I remember on Inside Edition back in the day, there was some little blurb on the news on Inside Edition that showed a VW club in Southern California. That wasn't the club. Was that the club that was on it, that Fast Four V-Dubs? Because for some reason, that name really sticks out to me, and I don't know why.
Fast Four was a very, very large group of party animals in '85, '86. Before I knew anybody in the club. Definitely a heavy presence at this, in the shows, that type of thing. But you may be talking about Volkman and Strauss, and those guys were based out of Orange County, and that they were a very, very large group of people.
Yeah,
very large group. Volkman and Strauss. I mean, German Folks was. Obviously, it was established in '82. They were definitely well known. Who else can you think of?
Well, so you knew the guys from Fast Four when you moved out there. Is that where you met Mike?
Well, what had happened was I tracked down. I somehow tracked down where they were meeting, and they were meeting at a pizza place in Montclair at the time. And somehow I found out through some channel. I really don't remember how, but I just drove up. I drove up and showed up out of the blue at one of their meetings. And I walk in and introduce myself, and they introduce themselves and have me sit down, and a few of the guys, they walked outside to take a look at my car. And because, they asked me, what my car was, I said, it's a squareback. And so they went out there, and one of the guys comes back in, and he's all like, hey, that's that squareback from the Long Beach show. I go, this is the guy. So with them, basically, obviously they all helped out each other, keeping their rides going and cleaning them up and doing what they do. They were led at the time. The president of the club, he was a very, very, very good painter. Very good with body. But he really knew how to lay down color.
And that's Mike Bates.
Mike Bates, yes, yeah. He definitely knows how to lay down color. The guy, I don't know what it is. It's just, he definitely, I believe he definitely, was given some kind of a blessing of a way on how to do that, because, there's very few people. There's a lot of great painters. There's no question about it now like that. And had that guy had some different resources to take him to to the upper echelon and of the car scene. I mean, who knows what that guy would be doing right now?
Right.
Just it just phenomenal painter, absolutely, no question, no bar none. The all the paint work that he did on the Dream, it spoke for itself.
Sure.
It really did.
And he did the graphics and everything too.
Yes, actually, it was the paint on the car was basically what you saw was he did 2 generations of paint on the car. He did what we refer to as 2.0 is when I made the commitment to take it off the road and convert and commit it to full show, and that commitment was decided on in August of 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And what the goal was for us as a group to take the car, strip it down, and get it all back together. And the target show was Long Beach RG Canning for December of 1990. We were going to debut it there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had 6 months to flip this car. So basically, we stripped down the car. We did some body repair to it that it needed, because there was areas where that weren't done very well from the previous paint work that was done on it. So we got that straightened out. And then basically put it to a color. It looked very similar, but it wasn't exactly the same color. The original 1.0 color was out of the box the 1988 Honda Accord green.
Mm-hmm.
The 2.0 version was we went and I wanted something that was a little more foresty looking, a little darker. Same paint, but how do we darken? Kind of darken this up a little bit, make it hue different. So we went to the paint shop, and we go in there, and he knows the guys that run the shop. So they sat there, and we sat there for about 2 or 3 hours tinkering with this Honda Accord color, taking specific hues that make the color and taking the hues out or adding more to see what kind of effect we get. And what we ended up doing was we ended up taking silver out of it to make it darker green with this blue hue to it.
Yeah. And
that was it right there. Done deal. Made up like 4 or 5 quarts of the paint. And so, because we knew we'd have to hang on to it because you only get one shot at it. And so we put the paint on it. We basically just all it was just the solid green for 2.0. We got it together, got it out. Then after the 91 season, I had to make a change for ISCA purposes.
Oh, really?
So that's where the graphics come in, and that's when we did the graphics. The graphics were actually laid out and designed by the club's window guy.
Mm-hmm.
He hand drew the graphics down, and then Mike applied the paint to it. We had 6 base layers of green. The base, and then we had the turquoise, the blue, the ghost graphics on it, and then it was on to basically, I want to say in the end it was like 8 or 9 coats of clear over it all.
Oh wow.
Yeah, when it was done, there was like 16 layers. It was real. It was nail polish thick, super thick, but it looked so deep. And Yeah, it came out really nice.
And then what?
That's
When you said you had to add the graphics for the Iasca stuff, what was that all about?
well, the going to the ISCA. That's I mean, that
Or
experience
ISCA,
is
yeah.
yeah. The ISCA. That's what really took us to a different. I mean, took us to a different level. And I learned from it, and what I was learning from it by going to the shows and getting the getting the judges' comments and talking to judges and talking, you know, and learn and talking to people on the ISCA circuit with cars that, you know, are just way, you know, way out there. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about details. As I learn that stuff, I bring it back and feed it to the club and the members and say, yeah, you know, this is what you got to do. You know, you got to do this. But when in ISCA, in order to really continuously compete, it's not like you could take the same car out and go and show over again to be competitive. You can still show it. There's nothing wrong with still showing it as is. It doesn't matter. But if you're out there to really compete and you're trying to win awards and continuously win awards with it, on the ISCA level, you have to make a major modification to the car pretty much, you know, if not every year, every other year.
Right.
And especially when you're going up to the when you're doing grand final stuff. I mean, definitely you have to have a completely altered car to win back to back. And there's only been 3 cars in the history that have ever done it. But you know, our little Volkswagen, you know, with our backyard beaters and everything, are out there trying to, you know, out there taking away awards from cars that got, you know, 6 figures in them at the time.
Sure.
When you look back at it, I mean, at the time, it really wasn't, you know, it wasn't for the purpose of doing that. It was just, we were awestruck that we were actually in the same building with a lot of these cars.
Right.
I mean, these people, you know, they just, you know, it was a completely different scene.
The hot rod scene versus the VW scene. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a different animal. There was still a lot of. There was still, depending on where you went, there was still a lot of prejudice over it. I mean, even though they had seen VWs and they had seen some heavy VWs compete. I mean, you got to talk about. This goes back to. I keep forgetting the name of the car. It was a car in '81. It was a Bug, all heavily modified.
Oh, you're talking about. Well, what do you call it? Days of Thunder. He called it. It was named after a movie.
It was done over twice. It was once black and once like a burnt orange.
Yeah.
Burnt orange was the last one. It was in. I remember the car. The car itself. You know, it had the front. The body tilted off of the frame.
Yep. Had the inboard Porsche motor.
Yes. And that was one of the first ones I think they ever released. I mean, that really struck a chord on the ISCA scene. Then obviously you fast forward, and then there was Peaches and Scream.
Right.
Peaches and Scream comes in, and to my knowledge, and this is a story that I got, it was only one of 2 VWs that were ever invited to the Fresno ISCA show, which the only way you can get into the show is by invite from the promoter himself, who was Blackie Jenigan.
Yeah.
And at the show, it was the only car to score 100 points.
Oh, really?
Which perfect score. That just goes for the amount of detail that was in the car. The car really itself wasn't heavily modified to what I remember.
Oh, you're talking about Peaches and Scream?
Yeah, but the car had immense detail.
Right.
And it was done. It was done in depth, hard to do something like that. You know, again, you know, judging is judging, and you know, it's subjective to the to the people, the time, the place, that type of thing. There's always that argument, always will be that argument. But again, I don't know if anybody's ever done anything better. I mean, as far as judging sheet's concerned. Then you had, which is my, I mean, yeah, I mean, when I mean, I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for this notchback that you own, a Future Shock, and it's not to displace it by any means, way, shape, or form. But to me, hands down, I mean, my favorite car is Suicidal Tendency.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't really put a car, a Type 3, any higher than that car.
Yeah, Paige Proctor's Suicidal Tendencies.
Yes,
that's a nice car. It was actually at the Grand National Roadster Show last year with Future Shock and all those guys.
Yes, I did see that, and I was heartbroken that I could not go out there to actually see Paige for the first time since I won Best of Show with the Dream.
Right.
And that was 92. So yeah, I hadn't seen Paige since then, and I mean, and he gave me insight on the car, on things I needed to do. He was also a driving force in me taking it off the street as well. So
his car motivated you to kind of get that car and build a show car.
Yeah. If there is, if there isn't anybody that was really serious about putting together a very heavyweight car, if they don't bring him up and Kid Dean, they have no clue. They really don't. That car, you can see modification with it, but it's like it was intended to be with the car. And there's stuff on that car that most people don't even notice or wouldn't know unless I pointed it to them. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. But I was heartbroken I couldn't get out there to see him. I really was. I really did.
It was a great show, and a lot of cars. Who knows when the next time all those cars will be together again? You know.
Oh God, no, it's no ands, ifs, or buts. I mean. It's, I always, when in '94, Good Guys did that VW Expo up in it was in Monterey, San Jose, somewhere up there.
Yeah.
I had just put the Dream away. I was done, and the word was out that the car was not going to be seen. It wasn't going to be shown anymore. And then Good Guys announces the show, and what they're going after is VW of the Year. They want to pick a VW of the Year, and I'm like, we got to do that. Wife's looking at me and going, we got to do it. We got to take it up there. We got to do it.
Right.
And the one thing I never did with the Dream was I never took it to a VW only event in Northern California. And that was the only one we ever did. And we went up there. And when I rolled up with the car, VW Judging Association's on the scene. They see the car and they're asking me, and they immediately start asking me, what are you doing here? I go, yeah, come on. They threw a bone out here. I got to try this. I got to see if we can pull this off.
Right.
And they're like, wow, I thought you retired this thing. No. Yeah. I go, okay. Well, they gave me a great show spot and everything. And that show drew probably about, for what I remember, at least a minimum of 20 undercarriaged cars.
Oh wow!
There was mine. Stan brought Bad Raz out for that. There was another Peach Bug out of the Vallejo area that was owned by a very young couple that was in Hot VWs. It was a fresh build at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They showed up with that car. Um, I don't know if you remember, but there was a black oval down that was really wreaking havoc down here for a short period of time called Built to Destroy. It was a jet black oval, but the guy had worked on it for 7 years, and it had a mix of triple chrome plating and triple gold plating all through suspension and drivetrain. And they had the pan covered with a really super high polished stainless steel.
Yeah.
And this car was, that car, it just flat out. I remember when he debuted it because we both showed up at the same showing sign in Chino the day before the 90. Let's see here. Promoters Cup.
Now, before the VW Classic, or was it the Jamboree?
This was Jamboree 91, one of the 91 Jamborees. He came out, and nobody had ever seen this car on the VW scene. That was its debut, and he won the show hands down.
I remember seeing one at Burt Silo's car that was the black 56 with the white rag.
The puzzle bug, Burt.
Yeah. Burt Silos, yeah.
Very well, yes, I do remember him very well. Him and the crew that came out of the valley. There was a guy with a at the time it was a white early squareback, a 65, I believe it was, running white 5-spokes, and the car was yellow with white scallops.
Yep.
Yeah, those guys were great guys. Ran into them, almost all the time, and. But yeah, this bug here, there was a lot of, when you say black oval, obviously over the years,
right? It's like saying red convertible.
But this thing here, it was a special car. The guy had it he was working on it for over 7 years, and he got the car out and he showed it for basically one season, and then he sold it because he was sick of looking at it. And the guy that bought it from him, he took all the suspension off of it and gutted all the drivetrain and everything, and he threw it into a black Ghia, and he took the Ghia up to this 94 show to compete for this VW event. And but yeah, that show there though, that was probably the closest thing. To really what I would consider a heyday. Golden age.
And which show are you referencing specifically? The Jamboree?
Oh, I'm sorry?
Are you referencing the Jamboree as the show? Is that the one you're talking about? Or are you talking about the show?
Yeah, this show, the show in '94, the Good Guys Expo.
Right.
That was the biggest gathering of undercarriage cars since probably the mid '80 Jamborees.
Yeah.
No question. No question at all. There was still quite a few cars, especially during my time. But it was kind of like in the 80s, a lot of people were getting pulled away from the mini truck scene, or it's just there really wasn't a lot of people really wanting to build another trailer queen at the time. They just wanted to build drivers,
right,
and call it a.
And what's your last show that how long do you campaign the car for?
I campaigned the car for from '88. Let's see here. Let's see. We're going from the very first show was June '89, VW Classic, and my last show was June of '94, and the VW Classic. Because at that time I was getting ready. I was preparing to sell it. So,
and what was the driving force behind you selling it? Just changing life, and you were starting a family, or what happened?
It was a down payment for my first place.
Yeah, that's a lot. I also own a chop top that was in hot VWs and VW Trends twice, And
bright red BMWs, correct?
the BRMs, yeah, with you used to have a Rockford Fosgate system. It belonged to Jim
Yep.
Moto, but it was built by Scott Gildner. So I own that car, and all these cars were around the same time that car that your car was out at the same time. So that's that's interesting that I've got two cars that were out at the same time, and so you're getting ready. And well, the reason I brought it up is because Scott originally sold it to Jim, who showed the car. It was Scott's daily driver, Scott Gildner, the painter in Simi Valley, and he sold it to put a down payment on a house. So that's the reason why he sold his car.
Yeah, it's a life change. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say that there was one very unhappy camper in the camp, and when I announced that I had sold it, and that was Mike Bates. He was not happy that I let it go.
Yeah.
But he understood, and when the day I dropped it off. And I dropped it off to the person that was buying it.
You remember who bought it?
Who had been after me for 2 years to try to buy the car from me. And because he wanted to buy it because his wife wanted the car. And I go, no. I kept telling him, nope, I'm not ready. Well, I'm done. Now I'm ready. Come and get it.
Right.
And, and I showed up at his door. Gave me the cashier's check. And
you remember what you sold it for back when you sold it in 94? Is 94 when you sold it?
I sold it in 94, and I sold it for, unfortunately, a total of $13,000.
Which actually was pretty good money back then for a Volkswagen. I mean, $13,000, that was some,
well,
I mean, in 94, based on what was going on with resale on Volkswagens.
I mean, the total in the end, the total investment in the car, display, trailer, and
you sold the trailer too for that money?
All the support and everything. No, I did not sell the trailer. The trailer did not.
I was like, that's a deal.
The car was his. The trailer's mine. I ended up selling the trailer later on, but yeah, it's I mean, in the end, I did break out about half of what I put into the whole shebang. So,
well, yeah, that's the thing. We never really get what we put into it.
You're never going to get what you put into it. I mean, and there's people out there that they tend to think they're going to buck the system and they're going to do it, and they just don't. Again, it's all. I mean, I get that kind of attitude from my dad. My dad was tinkered on cars in the 50s. He drag raced. And he knew the game. You can play around, put money in the car, make it all look pretty and everything, but all you're doing, I mean, it's like a boat. All you're doing is throwing away your money.
Right. You're investing in precious metal. That's what
the only way that you're going to get any significant amount back is you got to find that one person in the world that exactly wants what you have.
Right. With a custom car, it's kind of tough.
And I believe I came very close with Chuck Calloway when he bought the car.
And what was the guy's name that bought it? Chuck Calloway, you said?
Calloway, yeah. You mentioned that name, and you'll hear about a lot of bought car stories.
Was he a guy that just bought cars?
Yeah, he came out here from Arkansas, and he got himself in the scene. He shows up with this late Beetle, and it's got the Rod Suicide Tweed interior, and it's super tight, nice paint job and everything. You can tell there's definitely money in it, but the guy's got money. And the car got on the cover. I think the car was on the cover of Hot VWs. Well, he started doing was but he was also a car collector. So it wasn't VWs that he only collected. He also collected other cars.
Right.
But he was really into collecting VWs. And another Type 3 that he bought was a red picture window square back that was running chrome 8 spokes. Nothing special except the fact that it had it was a picture window, which is is the pillar cut out of the between the two rears, so it makes it a single piece window on each
Right.
side.
Yeah.
And then, but on the back, the kid that owned the car and was putting it together, he did a really phenomenal job on the detail in the engine compartment, and he had a really clean motor. And he loved to show that motor off, and he had this glass deck lid built for it. And I mean, it really looked very good. I mean, it was very impressive. The problem was that the kid that was building it, either he lost interest or he ran out of money for the most part. And basically Chuck came in and scooped it up from him, took it to his interior guy, put his suicide interior in it, finished off the car, and started campaigning the car that way for a while. He bought my car. There was a couple other cars I heard that he had purchased that were showing during that time. I do know he took the Dream. He took it out. Immediately took it to the shop, had the interior gutted, took the drivetrain out, had the interior redone, suicide, tweed. And then they had the tranny rebuilt, and he had the motor redone and put back in. But all the detail that was in the drivetrain was lost.
Right.
Never to be seen again. He took it to the next. He took it to the next jamboree, and people that I didn't attend the show. I don't remember my specifics of why I did not go. But maybe in a way I didn't really want to go back to see the car if he did bring it out, because I didn't know what he would do with it. But it didn't really bother me. Life was moving me in a different direction at the time. But as I ran into people that I knew still, were very in contact with, and actually a couple of the judges came to me and they asked me if I saw. The first question they asked me, he goes, "Did you see the car?" And I go, "No." And he goes, and they're like, "Good." And I'm like, "Okay, what's that? What's that supposed to mean?" And he goes, "Well," he goes, "made a lot of changes to it, and I'll tell you, he didn't do anything for it. It does not look as good as the way you put it together. Not even remotely close." And I'm like, wow. I go, okay, it is what it is. So he packed it up, took the car to Arkansas, put it in a warehouse. I guess he passed away. Cargoes gets into an estate sale. Somehow, way, shape, or form, it ends up in outside of Oklahoma City in some small-time car mechanic / dealer's outfit.
Yeah.
And he put it on. He put it online for sale. And I didn't see. The only reason I knew was because I did some searching for it about 5 years past that point. Because I was asked a couple of questions, about the car, and I said I have no idea where it is. I go, for all intent and purposes, the car's probably already been crushed.
Right.
And to me, I would have been good because, again, the only point of me keeping the car and being able to do what I was doing with it, I would have had to strip it completely down and make something completely different out of it. And that wasn't going to happen on my watch.
Right. Too much.
The car was built the way I wanted it.
Too much time and energy, and it's like why start over with something that you finished? So do you know where the car's at today?
The car actually, just within the last month, I got word it was posted on. I was posted on a Facebook Marketplace in Pacifica, California. And the person that had it was trying to sell the car for $3,000. Many pictures of it. It looked very rough.
I've got a special guest that's coming on the podcast right now, and I think him, Paul Davis, right?
Yes. Oh
So,
yeah, no, I know Paul.
so Paul, you there?
Yeah, what's up, Tony?
Hey, what's going on?
So, Paul, do you have any information on his missing squareback?
Yeah, it's in my backyard.
You bought it
I bought it
for 2,700.
for $2,700.
I saw that it sold for 2,700. Yeah. So you went and you got the beast, huh?
So the story is, I found the car like 4 years ago, or whatever, when that family up there in Pacifica bought it.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
I've been in contact with them, kind of throughout the years and stuff, kind of helping them get it together and everything. And they knew that I kind of had an attachment to it. So when they did post it for sale, we were in contact and stuff. And, they're a really cool family. They're more of an American car family. The wife just wanted the squareback because she had one back in the day, and they were kind of over it.
The women's car, it always has been. Everywhere you go, it's like women's home.
Yeah. So I'm talking to the husband and stuff. I'm like, dude, I really want the car. There's something there sentimental to me about the car. And he goes, but I said, but I don't have the money. And he was like, well, how long will it take you to get the money? And I said, just probably a couple of weeks or something. And he goes, all right, it's yours. So, I sold some little, toys and stuff that I got, raised the money real quick, and then road trip to Pacifica, 18 hours, 900 miles, jammed up there, grabbed it, brought it back home. And then, been kind of tinkering on it since. It runs and drives, and they had raised it up, so I already slammed it.
Yeah.
I had to take care of that. but Tony, I just, and I talked to Bill. Bill had talked about your car in the past. So I know he was a fan of the car.
Huge fan.
So the day that I made the deal, I texted him, and before I can even text him back again, he was already calling me, going, "You bought it?" So,
well,
that was pretty cool.
Oh, so Tony, like Paul's known for cars he's built. I'm known for cars that I built, and it's something kind of weird when you go back and kind of buy somebody else's car. And there's one of two things that happens: you either preserve it for the way that it was because of what it meant when it was out there, which is with the two cars that I have, right? Like those two cars, they're staying the way that they were, other than some minor refinements to make them better for driving today. But
right,
it's really in the car world, it's always like you build your own car, right? Like you don't buy it. But I think the scene's been around long enough to where guys that have been in the scene for a while, we look at some of these cars that inspired us, and if there's an opportunity to come up and buy it, it's like there's not many people that will appreciate a pink chopped hard top convertible notchback with suicide doors and red crushed velour interior. But it's like when those things come up and an opportunity, it's almost like you hate to see the car.
80s customization throws this scene for a loop.
Yeah. And it's really something like, because your car, all these cars throughout history have all inspired other people to build and get and do and get into the scene. And I think, how does it make you feel knowing that? Because Paul told me one of the most exciting things in his life was riding in your squareback to his first, I think you said your first VW show.
It was the Jamboree.
Stories. He was there when we were doing it. So
yeah. But I remember riding in, like, for whatever reason, I don't think my squareback was going to make it down to the Jamboree. So you're like, yeah, I'll pick you up. So we rode in your squareback to the Jamboree. Yep. And it was either 89, I think ish, like maybe late 89. And
it would have been 89. Yeah.
So when it was still a driver and stuff. And then, we get down there and I'm like taking the scene in, and then, like you said, with Paige Proctor and stuff, you were liked his car, and then listened to him, what he had to say about cars and stuff. And then, I kind of like think that you are the same way. So when I first did my orange car, you showed up over at Cable Airport and you were looking at it like, oh, maybe change this bolt, do this, do that, so I did those few things, and then look at where my orange car's been, so I think some of that stuff has been thanks to you as well. So that's when I had a chance to get this car, and like, I'm not going to let anybody else mess this car up anymore. If anybody's going to mess it up, let me redo it, you know what I mean? And keep it in the family, so to speak. So.
Yeah, I for sure. I know you called me when it first came up for sale, and they were asking $6,000 for it, and I just got done buying the limo bug or something that I had, and I thought, I need another project like a hole in the head. I'm sitting at around 7 or 8 Volkswagens right now, and I thought that'd be a cool car to get. And what bummed me out was all the changes from when you built it, Tony, to where it was, with the tweed interior and the stuff like that. I was just like, oh man,
that light green interior. Ugh.
Yeah, I've got a car that I built back in 1992 that I sold, and it was finally finished. And I blew the motor up, and I was just over it. I said, I'm done with this. I'm selling it. And it was a polar silver 63 ragtop, and the lady that I sold it to, she painted it like a teal metallic and ruined my car. And it was like, and the worst part is like, today I'm kind of on the hunt for that car if it ever pops up, but it's just one of those things like when you see something like that done to the car, but there's justice in bringing the car back to the way it was. Now, Paul, how much stuff have they changed on the cars? Is the rear built in with the black and white TV? Is that all gone? All that's been changed?
Yeah, that was all gone when the guy did the green interior, the green tweed, and the whole box piece that was around the engine bay is missing. So, and the green tweed, it's been sitting in the sun, and so it's deteriorating. So the interior is going to be redone. The beam, I know, Tony, you had chromed the beam, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the beam has been swapped out. A lot.
Let's get rid of this chrome beam and put a crusty one in there. Yeah.
So, it did sit out by the ocean for.
Beam is not for the weak. I'll tell you that for sure. There's no question. I was we were very lucky when we got that chrome work done for that car. You remember how much chrome was under that car.
Oh yeah.
And the wheels got polished up. All that stuff was done in Pomona at this little outfit called Pacific Chrome and Metal.
Yeah.
I think it was called. And they did all that chrome for me for just under $3,000. And at the time, everything that we had done, the guy easily, because the only reason I got it done so cheap and because he knew what we were doing, and Mike had a connection with the shop, so they were seeing business from the club. And here I come and I go, okay, I got all this, and I'll never forget the day I had to go and pick it up, and there was the bill, and I was like, oh my God, I got to explain this to the wife. But she was cool with it. She knew what we were doing, and it got done. But yeah, they told me that they easily could have gotten somewhere in the vicinity of $8,000-9,000 worth of work done for what they did. But that front beam, that was a major task. They had to dunk that thing like 3 or 4 times, and then even then, I still to the end of day, I still had to hand polish out the welded areas because the chrome the metal would still oxidize the area.
Yeah.
So it would shine. I'd have to go in there and polish it out by hand every show.
Well, I tell you, Tony, that car was so one of my favorite things is the cover shot. Like, I love, my favorite cover shots are always a cover shot where something's going on, and there's like, you're tightening up a lug nut, and you got a buddy of yours from the club in there. And those are my favorite cover shots of all the cover shots for magazines. So
Mike showed up 10 minutes late. Otherwise, we would have had a third car in the shot.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mike 65 would have been in there. Yeah, and he would have been in it as well. There was a shot with a girl in a bikini. They did take shots. She was a club member, but they didn't use them. They only used the one that you obviously saw in the magazine. And that's, every once in a great while I look at, I may take a look at it, and there's that skinny, that a guy in the front, right at the front, making it look like he's tightening the lug. Yeah, that's skinny me. I definitely do not even come close to that anymore.
Yeah,
So.
the young version of all of us, right? That's what ends up getting trapped in time, which is great. And when I was able to, after I had a couple cars featured, I realized that I could kind of take charge of the photo shoot a little bit. or at least give a lot of creative input. And I made sure that when my Type 34 Ghia was shot for the magazine, I made sure that I did kind of a cover scene in the front of my garage with a couple cars out there. And I just love that scene because that's really, the whole 80s and 90s scene was just, it was about selling a lifestyle. It was like, here's this whole, these young, cool kids from California that just have nothing to do but cruise rad cars and wear, low top Vans and spike their hair. So I definitely love that whole vibe. I love the way, it's just classic of the 80s. And I think this picture where it's kind of on that debut row at the Classic, it's got Paul sent me some pictures and you're underneath the car, detailing the engine compartment before you put mirrors in and stuff like that. You got the brake drums off, but it's on a black piece of carpet, and I can tell from the picture it looks like it's in that row that they used to do at the
Jamboree.
At the Jamboree, yeah, where they'd have all those cars set up like the debut cars.
Yeah, that was that would have been if there's drums off of the car. That was one of the last shows I did with it because that was the last area we actually dug in and tried to get a couple more points out with. Again, that's ISCA leaking air. Yeah, and to be honest with you, at that Jamboree show, which would have been its last, if we did not take Best of Show, I mean, I was already in the mindset that if it didn't take Best of Show, it never would have. And the only reason it did take Best of Show at that show was because of what we did there. Because otherwise they would have given it to Kenny Fitzer's bus. Yeah.
And Kenny Fitzer's also been on the podcast. So he's, and what's interesting is, Kenny Fitzer is the guy that just built those wide body buses that were at SEMA.
I understand. Yeah. Shop down out here in Corona. It's really close by.
What's interesting is Kenny and I have become pretty good friends because of doing the podcast with him and, having some other interactions together, and just really the coolest part about Kenny is he's still a VW guy to the core. He's still got 2 buses, and he's building one that's going to be coming out sooner than later. And he's got 2 more at home. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do because it's just one of those things where, he's just got that was back in the day when it was like chrome, whatever you can, you know what I mean?
Did he touch base about his black squareback?
He did. He talked about the black squareback, like a panel side squareback that he built.
Yep. Yeah. That's the first time I met him. He brought that car out to it was a SoCal Club Council show and shine, and we were part of the show with a few other clubs, and we all had our cars down there and showing. And he rolls in. Him and his dad rolled in with that panel square. Yeah, that was the very first time I ever met him.
Yeah, no, he's a good dude, man, and he's still all totally into VWs, man. So great guy. If you ever get a chance to go down and see his shop, KPD Designs, man, he builds some phenomenal stuff in world record time, man. So
posted on IG. It's really, well beyond whatever I would do with a car, to be honest with you. Yeah. I would never dream of that. It's just fabrication. That's out of my concept. But yeah, no, I seen that he's doing very well, and he actually continued on, and he's doing what he's doing, and definitely deserving. The guy is smart. His dad was from what I understand, his dad was an engineer or something of that nature.
Yeah, rocket scientist.
Yeah,
literally. Yeah.
In his blood. It's in his blood, and he did very well.
And I think back when you go back to the 90s, the 80s and 90s, and you look at what was done back then, you really, it's just such a big difference with the VW scene versus the mini truck scene, because it was like the mini truck, you're buying a brand new car. You could put some graphics on it. Sure, some guys went crazy and rebuilt the whole brand new car, but for the most part, these guys that take these roached out Volkswagens like yours and, you know, all the other ones that are out there and just completely rebuild them from the ground up and make them into show cars. I mean, that's kind of a testament to the difference in the people that are in the hobby, you know, because it's easy to bust out a checkbook and build a mini truck when it's brand new and sure, hop in it and drive it to the shows and do all that kind of stuff. But to do that in your Volkswagen, it's a lot more difficult, and it takes a lot more commitment to the hobby. And as I was talking on my last podcast with one of the guys I just did a podcast with, you know, there's just this commitment to being cool. Like no matter what, you're doing a Volkswagen and a late model at that. I mean, that was one of the things, you know, because that squareback was a late model squareback, you know, and as time goes on, everybody wants the early ones, but I loved it just for being a late model squareback.
I actually really wasn't looking for a late model. I was always a fan of something early. I definitely wanted to get myself a 65 or earlier, but I could never just find one. You know, but you know, again, yeah, everybody's going to know me for the 72, but I did actually put together a 68 after I retired the Dream, and I put a 68 together really quick because I had a growing family. I had a son now at this point,
right?
And I wanted a clean. I mean, I got the car dirt cheap. You know, found it in a hole in the wall in Riverside. Some guys sold it. I had to put a battery in it to drive it home, and got it running. Started driving it. It was the perfect car to drive around. I didn't have to worry about anybody stealing it. It's Chia Pet for carpet and springs for seats.
Right.
But I mean, the drivetrain's solid, and it was great. I mean, it was a fun car. Sounded like a NASCAR inside of it, but it was a fun car. Did some club stuff with it, but then the day came. My wife gave birth to our son, and I had to make a commitment to clean that car up. Otherwise, I had to get rid of it.
Right.
And so I cleaned it up and did the 13-month treatment on it, and new paint, new interior, all the usual suspects handled everything for me. Built this perfectly solid driver on the ground. I actually did show the car. I showed the car, I want to say probably 5 or 6 times, and always took class with it. Even though I don't feel it deserved class, but it took class with it. But it was a fun car. It was a good looking car. I do have pictures of both cars together. Some pictures. I think Paul might have a couple, maybe a couple of them I've sent to him.
Yeah, if you've got some pictures, by all means, please send them to me. I'd love to get those checked out.
I think I haven't even put those together, but I do have I do got a couple of the 68 too.
The 68, yeah. I mean, you have with the rack as well.
I'll have to go through my album.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I've got all that stuff. I could definitely open the scrapbook on that. I mean, I could shoot you pictures of the car each car when I bought it, each car when they were put together.
Yeah, send them to me. I'd love to put it together with the YouTube video for this. So what I do is a YouTube video to the audio of this that kind of goes through the paces. So yeah, that would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, no worries. I'll get those to you.
Well, perfect. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and Paul, good luck with the car. So Tony, what are your feelings about Paul buying the car?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's two things about the car. Okay, first and foremost, when he told me he actually gave the news to my wife that the car was up north.
Yeah.
And it had been sitting in the Reno area for a long time, out of sight, out of mind. And then this party got it in NorCal. And when, he told me about it. I saw the pictures of it, and I'm thinking, okay, that thing's beat up. Obviously somebody wasn't taking care of it. But it is what it is. My initial feelings about it were, okay, the thing's still alive.
Yeah.
I go, more power to whoever gets it in the future. If they clean the thing up and they respect what it is, more power to them. If they decide to make something different out of it, more power to them. I don't, it's not the emotional attachment to the car really it died a long time ago.
Right.
But when when it came, I knew if it would float around long enough, if Paul wasn't going to get it, I had a gut feeling that Mike would try to grab it.
Yeah.
And Mike would get his hands on it. Whether he would do anything with it or not, it's beyond us. I mean, he'd always grab a car here and there. If it lingered around long enough, somebody was going to get it.
Wow.
Paul, you got it. It definitely would be great to see the car again in person. Obviously we can make that happen in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but the other feeling I have about it is that it is the fact that it isn't crushed and it still exists.
Right. I mean, that's got to make you feel good, right? That you built something that people liked enough that they held on to it all this time.
All this time, yeah. I guess it's quite surprising, but I'm sure it probably Paul, you probably can attest that it's probably in a world. I mean, it's in a world of hurt. It needs some love.
Oh yeah, but so the paint, and my wife was just telling me this the other day. She says, somebody said, "You bought another car?" And I said, "Yeah, but this car, it's got some meaning to it, so I had to get it." And my wife said, "Yeah, actually, it's not that bad."
Yeah, it looks like maybe the roof needs to be resprayed, right?
It's going to be really, really rough to try to do repair work on that car. I believe, I'm just going to say, knowing the processes and all the layers that were done to the car to make it what it was, I'm sure you see that. There's definitely plastic in the car. There's no question about that. But it's just to go in, you're going to try to repair that stuff.
My plan is fix the roof. That's the major eyesore, and then the rest of it, I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to leave it as is, and let it do its natural thing, because I got other projects ahead of it. But I'm just glad that it's mostly there. And Bill, I'm going to try and fix the roof and dial it in and bring it to Vegas for your show.
Yeah, that'd be rad, man. That'd be super cool to see. So I'd love to see that car. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Vegas.
So that's kind of the plan right now. Yeah, because Bill does a show every year in Vegas. So
when's Vegas?
October 6th and 7th at the Orleans Hotel and Casino, the one crazy weekend. So if you come down, it'd be cool to see you there with the car.
I actually am off the week. I mean, I'm off the week going. That weekend leads into the 9th. I just actually am off all that week. I will see what I can there.
Yeah, that'd
you
be
need
cool.
to come.
I assure you it'll be a good time. Nothing better than cruising Volkswagens on the Strip.
I saw some pictures that Paul posted when he took his car out there. Looked like a lot of fun. I've been there a couple of times. I've been to Vegas a couple of times. I drove the 68 there twice.
Oh wow!
Showed it at the. I meant to show it the first time I drove it. Meant to show it, but we had to come home because of a medical emergency. The second time I drove it out. I actually did get it in the show, and there was a lot of people I met, a lot of people that knew the car, they remembered me from the Dream, and they remember seeing it at not Cashman Center, seeing it at the What's the is it the convention center that's the one that's
Yeah, so
is
there's the Thomas and Mack, there's the convention center, and then there's also Cashman Field, which is downtown.
Cashman Field. Okay, it was Cashman Field. That's where I showed the Dream one time. I did ISCA stop there.
Yeah.
I did that there. Yeah. Rolled in just as they were getting ready to close the doors. We were running late and got there and rolled in with the car. Had an end cap. I had a couple people from the that were in the area at the time that approached me, and and one of them told me, he goes, you own that car? And I go, yeah. He goes, you're the reason I bought a square back.
Was that here in Vegas?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows? That might have been my brother George. You never know.
Yeah. So I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that.
Well, and that's really, it's really what the hobby's about, right? Just doing, you see something that inspires you, and then you go and build something that inspires somebody else. So I think that's the best part of the hobby, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Paul brought a lot of energy when that car was getting put together.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. Well, I'm glad we got to have you on the podcast and tackle the history and the story of Pookie's Dream. Where's the name Pookie's Dream come from?
Pookie you're familiar with the Garfield comic strip?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Pookie was the teddy bear for Garfield.
Okay.
Okay, so before I got the car and whatnot, my wife's nickname to me before we got married was Pookie Bear, because I was always a huge Garfield fan.
Yeah.
I still to this day have a huge collection of stuffed Garfield all put away, but Pookie was his teddy bear. She nicknamed me Pookie Bear, and decided, well, we got to give the car a name. And I was thinking about it, and I go, well, what about this? And she thought it was great. So,
well, cool.
I actually still have a show sign.
Oh, you do?
Show sign still hanging in my garage.
Nice.
Yeah. The only thing that's really wrong with it is it's just got a small chip in one area, but other than that, it's all intact and it's actually in pretty really good shape.
Cool.
Tony, do you sell the plates?
I can take it off the wall, and if you wanted to use it, you can.
I was just wondering if you still have the personalized license plates, though.
No, the plates went with the car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the plates went with the car, unfortunately. I have the Pookie T2 plate, but I do not have Pookie. I do not have PKY DRM, PKYS DRM. That one I let go.
Gotcha.
Well, cool, guys.
Near my house, man. If you want to come see it, you can come see it.
We'll figure that one out. That's cool.
Wow.
I'm got it. Congratulations. I hope I hope you knew what you were getting, and I hope it wasn't too much of a disappointment to get when you saw it.
I knew I had seen good pictures of it, so I wasn't too upset when I picked it up. So.
Okay.
For the price, it runs and drives, and it's a Volkswagen, so attachment to it at that price, it's a done deal.
That's it, man.
Right on.
Well, great.
Right
hey, man, it was great having both you guys on the podcast today, and I appreciate both of your contributions to the VW scene for sure.
All right, Bill.
All right, guys. Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Hey.
If you liked that podcast, and I know you did, make sure you go to support Let's Talk Dubs by going to our website, letstalkdubs.com, clicking on the store tab, and picking up some merch to support the podcast. When you do support the podcast, you get a shout out. You can also give a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to get a shout out. So our first shout out this week goes to my guy Juan Hernandez out of Stafford, Arizona, picking up some merch. Appreciate him so much. Want a shout out on Let's Talk Dubs, pick up some merch, or leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, even Spotify, wherever you go. Make sure you leave a review. We appreciate you when you review the podcast. So also share this podcast with your friends. We really appreciate the podcast is growing like crazy. Tons of people are getting it because you guys are sharing it with your friends. So Do me the favor, keep sharing this podcast with all your friends. And until next week, guys, later.